This is a note I need to remind myself so that when it becomes the time for me to speak for myself and others as seniors, that I can remember the key messages. I'm a senior. I live in a senior housing apartment building. It's owned by the City of Toronto. It's subsidized by the province of Ontario, and it has capital expenditures from the federal government probably as well. This building brings a revenue annually of about $2.5 million. That goes to the city. That's including rent and subsidies. Right now, this building is in renovation stage to replace the cladding, the siding that's on the outside of the building, to replace the windows on the building, and to replace the heating and provide air conditioning so as to probably create a much better environment for seniors to age in place, as they quote. But age in place with dignity and grace is not the slogan here. There is retaliation if a tenant brings an issue to management. There is passive aggressive ignorance to the ongoing day-to-day issues that come up, such as doors that are not properly locked, doors that should be accessible and are not, stairs, access for those with special needs, such as walkers, scooters, wheelchairs, etc. Even the elevator here is too small for a stretcher. So whether you go in an ambulance or a hearse, you're going to be placed in a wheelchair and brought down the elevator that way. There is a capital expense to renovate this building, and there is no oversight as to the waste of time, money, and negligence that is this construction project. It would be referred to as a boondoggle, which is, by definition, a sloppy waste of money. The back door has been locked in the open position for more than 6 months because they have not fixed the lock mechanism. We have homeless people coming in here and sleeping in the basement. We've had the lockers broken into, probably by a construction employee, but certainly with somebody with a bolt cutter. And there are cameras in here, but there's no investigation into the theft. The so-called scooter room in the basement, which is not accessible by anybody with a scooter really, was broken into, and an electric bike was stolen with no repercussions, no investigation to speak of, and certainly, like a lot of things around here, with no results that show some responsibility and some accountability. There are tenants in here with mental health issues that get away with harassing other tenants. Bullying comes from corporate and staff. even the cleaners. There's a change of staff every 6 months or more. So we don't have the same superintendent, the same social worker, the same cleaner, the same area manager. We don't have the same anything. They have been moved around and mixed up so that confusion is the only constant here. When an issue is brought to a social worker, it's not dealt with because by the time they make a move, the next person comes along and doesn't know what's happened. They have no coordination of their information except that of the tenants, which is used to retaliate. All the tenants have files. There are tenants in here that have very thick files because they have been a problem tenant for many years. And because we're seniors, it's of course a challenge to relocate or evict a tenant who is harassing or belligerent or bullying another tenant. And management, like I said, they don't know what's going on, so they do nothing. They do nothing. They gossip amongst themselves, but they retaliate. If anything, the staff here are visibly seen on their phones or looking busy trying to avoid actually doing work. There are many things to be done here under the guise of accessibility, and yet they are creating barriers to access. They have put fences up around this building that have been here for more than a year and are slowly encroaching on our space. They have dug up all of the foliage, the beautiful flowers and bushes and berry bushes. They've killed off trees. They have removed trees indiscriminately. And one tree was probably only about 5 years old. It was planted and then just dug up and tossed aside. There are tenants here who value growing and gardening and nurturing, and the rest of us appreciate the fresh air. But right now there's more dust on the property and in our apartments than fresh air. And nothing is on a schedule. They have said things would be done and they're not on schedule. Windows were supposed to already be arriving and the installation should have already started. And just on that, the windows are smaller than they are supposed to be, even though they came and measured the windows at least twice in my apartment. But the windows are not going to fit properly, so they're going to add material and take window space away and interfere with our apartments for days and create dust and pollution and stress for all of us. Many of us have died in the 4 years that I've been here. I have witnessed most of the people who were socially involved die. There may be about a dozen people who continue to be the outspoken or gossiping tenants. At least they come out and they engage. Some to be miserable, some to be social, some as a clique that take over a space by bullying by the numbers. That number rules because they're there first. There are no rules or regulations or methods of social etiquette. There are no policies or procedures. There's nothing, even though it was said at a community meeting that rooms that are accessible throughout the day would be locked at certain times at night and not open till a reasonable time in the morning. But they're not regulated and they are not controlled. There is a fob system here that is broken and dysfunctional. There is an intercom system that was installed and didn't work for more than 6 months, and now it works sometimes. This is all dysfunction adding to our health and our well being. This is elder abuse. It is senior negligence. If you have parents, and maybe you have grandparents, I would ask that you care. We need immigration, and many of the staff here don't speak English as a first language, which is fine because it doesn't take a language to do what they do. Just it takes a skill. And some people here demonstrate that they are competent. I would say the canopies in the front and the back have been installed really well, even though the drain spouts sound like drummers practicing when it rains because they've installed them without oversight. So just by moving them a little bit so that they're on an angle, the water doesn't drip and make a noise that is disruptive and disturbing to the whole neighborhood. Not just this building, but the whole neighborhood hears the sound of that water dripping because the aluminum or steel pipes, the drain spouts, just need to be moved a little so the water comes as a water fountain instead of a drip, an annoying drip. Other than that, these canopies will last 75 years. The building itself may not. The cost to taxpayers will be exponential. It is going to cost more than it should to fix this building, to repair it, to make it less than adequate. Like I said, the elevator is not big enough to hold a stretcher. And there are 2 elevators that are sometimes working. There are 7 floors in this building, and there are people on all floors who are using assisted mobility devices. There are people in this building that have service dogs, and there's no accommodation for that. People are being made to leave the property to do activity that should be sustainable on the property. People should be able to take their dog on the property and have a space where they can let the dog do what a dog does and be able to manage their pet. And people should be able to come out and sit and get some fresh air. People should have activities so that they can gather and have mental health moments. There needs to be social activity. There needs to be medical attention and psychological support. There needs to be end of life support or transfer to assisted living support. There are people in here who are in Bridgepoint and they are either in rehab or in palliative care waiting to pass. This building is contributing to the demise of good people. This building is killing good people because of neglect, because of abuse, because of retaliation. and it's at everybody's expense. The taxpayer is overpaying for this building to be rehabilitated. The tenants here should not be living here in under these miserable conditions. The staff are being paid to waste time and interfere with the access and the right to reasonable living conditions. And we're all paying for it because there are good people living in here that are not having a good time. They are suffering and looking forward to death because that at least is an end to the suffering. Who cares though, right? Really. When you become a senior, would you like to be disrespected? This building has probably all of the world represented in immigrants. Many don't speak English at all. Many are challenged to speak English. And then there is a history of ancestry of immigration. I'm an 8th generation Canadian. Where I grew up, there were 3 reserves. And I also grew up in a border town at the border of Canada and United States. I also grew up along the Seaway in what is called the Seaway Valley as part of Upper and Lower Canada in the evolution of Canada. That's where I grew up. That's where my family grew up. And now as an elder, as a senior, I'm being dismissed. And my neighbors are being abused and dismissed and removed sometimes weeks after they have passed away. There are people in here who are engaged in illegal activities such as selling cigarettes and opiates. And you know, given everything else I've just said, they're probably the bright light in here because at least there is a source for a way out for those who would want to commit suicide. Slowly with tobacco or quickly with opiates. Because if we don't care about ourselves, then who cares, right? And we don't have anybody to look to because they're so busy, looking busy. This is just a note I had to make to myself because somebody has to stand up for me. And I want to stand up for you too before you get to where I am. I would like people to know what I've experienced. And in 4 years in this building, I have experienced a lot. Harassment by tenants on tenants, theft of medication from tenants, illegal activity, theft of community funds. My dog was poisoned. 2 other dogs were suspected of being poisoned. So many things, and too many abuses, acts of negligence, dereliction of duty. They're just killing us. And it seems to be making money because, of course, if you die and they don't find you for 3 weeks, they get to renovate the whole apartment, replace the floors and the cupboards and the walls, everything. So there's a make work project. And the exterminator comes every Wednesday. Every Wednesday. Every Wednesday. There are bed bugs and cockroaches and spiders and rodents and ants. There seems to be no intention to actually solve any problems in here, except one. The people who move in here are going to die here. There's no way out, except maybe to transfer. But even then, if that's what an elder value is, then we no longer have a value. My whole life, I have worked for the betterment of humanity. And I know that many of my neighbors are good people who have done the same. I mean, hell, we've survived this far. So even the people who at some point in their life became homeless by the bad choices, even they survived, and even they contributed to the well-being of the rest of us just by being there to turn on the lights. Hopefully, you will have a good retirement and that you'll be happy at the point where you have to turn off the lights.